Hello everybody, my name is Boulevard. Welcome to Tournament Tactician, the premier tournament tier list for Legends of Runeterra. As you can see, I've gotten rid of the archetype section. It was causing more headaches than it really solved. I don't think we're really at a point where people are coming to this spreadsheet with no idea of what they want to be playing. Looking at that, I think everyone has a pretty good idea of what these decks do, what they look like in general. And ultimately, 10 out of 10 comments that I got about the archetype section were, oh, you think this deck is this archetype? It's just more of a headache than it was really worth. So I decided to scrap it. And ultimately, I'd like to try and probably soon, hopefully before the end of the year, transition this off of a Google Doc and into its own website, but that is something that I'll kind of figure out hopefully soon. As for the actual tier list, because I didn't really give you much to go off of last week, I just kind of got on, talked about, Seraphine and Vayne are more broken than anything else, kind of put Akshan in a similar category as them. Akshan has kind of hard fallen off in favor of Pantheon being what a lot of people kind of look at as the third champion, and the best Pantheon deck being paired with Vayne. You could split it up a little bit. And in fact, I myself have personally been enjoying Varus Pantheon quite a bit. But let's talk about the actual tier list. Obviously, you want to be playing Seraphine and Vayne. And there's a lot of options. I don't really have any strong feelings about which flavor of these you pick, mostly because so many of them play so similarly that if you are coming with an anti-Seraphine plan, I do not think you are coming with an anti-Noxus Seraphine plan. I think you are coming with an anti-Seraphine plan. Your anti-Noxus lineup should do just as well against the Shadow Isle lineup. Now, there is a little bit more variance within the Vayne decks. For example, Pantheon Vayne plays pretty differently than Rumble and Zed Vayne, which play very similarly. I throw down my champion, I throw a bunch of, pump spells into them, and I kind of just try to smork you down from there. So yeah, there is a little bit more variance within the Vayne, but at the end of the day, you probably will have similar matchups into something like Ionia Zed Vayne and Targon Pantheon Vayne. Maybe not as close as you'd like, but I don't think that either of these decks are untargetable. I think an anti-Seraphine lineup is, people, when they see anti-Seraphine, they're really hoping that it is going to be a deck that also plays like Seraphine. But you've been around the block. I've been around the block. We know what this lineup looks like. It's probably some Stony Suppressor bullshit, or like you play Taric Poppy and Annie Jin and something else, which is one of the reasons that Annie Jin and Taric Poppy are in tier 2. They are probably one of the backbones of an attempt at an anti-Seraphine lineup. But ultimately, I would highly recommend banning either the Seraphine or the Vayne out of your opponent's lineup and sort of trying to soft counter whichever one you are not banning with your third deck, because everybody should have a Seraphine deck and everybody should have a Vayne deck. I don't really think there's a lot of use in dropping one of them and saying, oh, well, people are going to like hard target Seraphine, because you don't really know if people are going to hard target Seraphine or going to hard target Vayne, because Vayne is expected to be more popular, but I would anticipate that 80% of lineups are going to have both of these champions in them unless you're hard targeting. This isn't very exciting. I think we all know that this is where things stand. I kind of want to talk about some of the other decks in tier 2, like Zed Hecarim. If you haven't seen this, it's just a return to Shark Chariot. It's got some cool new tricks. The problem that I have with this build is that it's pretty low agency. If you don't draw your champions, you are significantly weaker as a deck. You've got some cool combat tricks, but at the end of the day, you're really just kind of throwing down ephemerals, really only playing the game on your attack turn, and ultimately it's just like not a deck that I am a fan of. I don't want you to think that this deck is weak, but it is low agency, and therefore not something that I would recommend. Varus Pantheon has popped up rather recently. It's a pretty cool deck. It's kind of looking to be the big Demacia deck of the format, and Varus being able to get very large with Overwhelm on the backside, very good. And this deck has been performing very well for me into Vayne decks because of the Unforgiving Cold as a 3 of in the list, acting as that 2-mana Harsh Winds. I've been struggling a little bit with the Rumble variant of Vayne because there is Spell Shield on the Rumble, and my things that pop Spell Shield are all very expensive. There's no Fish Fight or anything like that in this deck because you can't, because those are Shurima cards. So yeah, you do struggle with popping Spell Shield, but it's one of those things that you kind of have to accept. You're not Demacia, so you really can't get any other barrier in there, and ultimately, yeah, you are going to have a little bit of a harder time with the Rumble variant of Vayne specifically, but I still think that, I'd be banning the Seraphine if I was running something like Varus Pantheon, though I haven't had too much of an issue with the Seraphine either, but, you got to ban one of them. Kind of depends on, again, what the rest of your lineup looks like, what you are comfortable playing into. We've got a new Overwhelm build. Sejuani Gwen is out. Sejuani Renekton is back in. This is doing pretty well into, I think, Seraphine and Vayne decks, but again, it's just another very low agency deck, which makes it rather draw dependent. And what I'm really not loving is that the Seraphine decks, I think a lot of people consider them pretty high agency because you have so many different options that you can take. The randomly generated cards give you a little bit of different avenues towards how you want to play the game. And ultimately, the fact that the counters for this are so low agency, like Ephemeral and Overwhelm and Puppy Rally, and just trying to like get on board and overwhelm your opponent before they can make it to the late game and get all the Seraphine spells doubling up, I think is part of what's contributing to the format feeling so bad. Vayne, another relatively low agency deck, not across the board. There are some more complicated versions than others, but for the most part, every time I've played against Vayne Rumble on ladder, it's just been pass, Vayne, Rumble, tumble the weapon. A monkey could do it. So I think the meta is just a little bit, there's just not as much agency as people kind of like. It is a little bit of a problem. I'm really hoping that we're going to get a hotfix patch, not because I don't want to deal with another 2.5 weeks of Vayne and Seraphine as they stand. I don't want to deal with another 2.5 weeks, but I'm trying to think of the Runeterra balance teams sort of percentage of the time that they get things right on the first try, and it's pretty low, I think. So I want them to hotfix nerf Vayne and Seraphine, realize that it's not enough and they fucked up, and then actually nerf them for the Worlds. That's kind of my hope. But because the qualifiers aren't streamed, I'll be streaming them. But because they're not officially streamed, maybe it doesn't really matter if those are a shit show and absolutely fucking awful. A new set will be out by the time that we get the actual top 16. So who knows? But that's just kind of where I stand on things right now. Like Akshan Lee's still a good deck. TF Swain doing some cool things just because it has access to like heavy metal and Ravenous Flock, making it a little bit better than it was like last meta. Like Yasuo Katarina kind of like fell off the tier list in a similar vein. Like it was just very good into last meta. It's not doing as well this meta. TF Swain kind of the opposite. And then in tier 3 we have some of the leftovers that I think are still popping up a little bit, like Plunder, Akshan Pantheon, Nora Swain. Probably not going to see any Jace Heimer, but, I wouldn't be surprised if there was like one of them in top cut, kind of randomly. Red Gwen felt very good on the opening days. I was like very big on this when the expansion dropped, and then it just sort of stopped working. Scouts and Frostbite midrange also making a bit of a comeback for a similar reason as far as Pantheon, where you've got that Harsh Winds doing very well against the Vayne decks. Not so much the Rumble one, but, you have a little bit of an easier time popping spell shield like that in Frostbite midrange. You also have Iceveil Archer in order to punish the development of something like a Rumble on 4 into a Tumble. So they just play the Rumble, they have the attack token, you Frostbite it immediately, you don't really have to worry about the Tumble as much on that turn, and you can kind of slow down the game a little bit more there. But Frostbite midrange, probably not do, like this is very much a ban Seraphine deck. If you're on the Frostbite midrange, just leave the Vayne open. So that is my thoughts on the meta right now, where the tier list stands, all that kind of stuff. I kind of thought this was going to be longer, but at the end of the day, it is still just like a Seraphine Vayne parade and then some low agency counter decks, which not great. Now, as far as this weekend, if I were playing, I would be playing the flavor of Seraphine that I've been enjoying the most is the Bilgewater variant. Now, I haven't tried too many of the others. I tried Noxus a little bit, didn't love it. I tried Ionia a little bit, also didn't love it. Haven't given SI a shot, but the Bilgewater version is just like not popular. What you get out of it is just a little bit more threat density through Shelly. So I always found that pretty cool. I have been consistently doing pretty well into the Noxus version of Seraphine with it, so that's just the version that I like. It's the one that I'd be on, but again, I think that the Seraphine version that you pick is probably one of the least important lineup decisions that you're going to make this weekend. For Vayne, I like Gwen. I don't know that I think it's the best version, but it is the one that I sort of enjoy the most. And then for my third deck, I would play Varus Pantheon, because that is the one that I have been sort of just playing the most. And yeah, that's what I would bring this weekend. We've got the online league series. The signups will be in the link for the description below. I will not be here. I'm going to Worlds for League of Legends this weekend. It's in New York City. I live in Pennsylvania, so I'm just hopping up for the weekend. But Aegis opens up tonight. I was supposed to cast that. I had to tell them not this week. I don't get to do the online league series, which I think I haven't even done since August at this point, because I wasn't here in early September, and then the TO had to take a break, and then this is the first one since then, and it's just like, now I suddenly haven't done an online league series in like 2.5 months, and then Shadox just hit me up like an hour ago to cast this like 5v5 grudge match that's going on, and I had to tell him no, and last weekend I was slumped out on my couch, bored out of my mind for 48 hours. Suddenly there's 3 things for me to cast this weekend, and I'm like, now I'm going to be in New York City. So I'd tell you that I'm going to take pictures and stuff, but when I was 23 years old and I went to Japan for the first time, I went for 8 days. I came home with 5 pictures. I'm just not a vlogger. But anyway, that is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Boulevard, and as always, good luck in your tournaments.